In Bangladesh, the government has transported the first Rohingya refugees from their longtime camp at Cox's Bazar to a new island location. This was a unilateral decision made without the cooperation of the UN Refugee Agency and has been criticized by human rights groups. As a reminder, many of these refugees have been in Bangladesh for years. The most recent large group of arrivals came in 2017 when more than 750,000 people fled their home in Myanmar following a genocidal campaign launched by the military there.
Cox's Bazar, the world's largest refugee settlement. For the Rohingya who live here, Bangladesh's decision to relocate 100,000 of them to Bhasan Char only adds to their uncertain fates. For some, it's a chance to escape the squalor of the camp. The person in charge here told me we'd have a room on the island like his office. That's why I agreed to move there. Others have doubts over starting anew on a place known as the floating island. We came here after so much torture in Myanmar. Even if we're shot 2,000 times, we won't go to Bhasan Char. We feel safe here in the camp. We don't want to go to Bhasan Char. More than 1 million refugees are squeezed onto 26 square kilometres near the Bangladesh-Myanmar border. The Bangladeshi government says its relocation plan will ease the pressure on the crowded camp. According to the country's foreign minister, AK Abdul Momen, Rohingya refugees won't be taken to Bhasan Char forcibly. Only those who are willing to go will be going there voluntarily. But some refugees say they're being given no choice. First, my father was arrested by the police. They beat him badly. He was put in a dark cell for a day and a night, and they asked him to choose between death or going to Bhasan Char. That's when my father agreed to go. International rights groups have also published evidence of forceful relocation.
We are concerned that in a remote island, which is off limits to everyone, including journalists and rights groups, it poses serious concerns about human rights monitoring. And for that to be overcome, I think the authorities should create that framework. They should ensure that the refugees are able to take free and prior informed consent. They're able to give those. They're able to take voluntary decisions to be able to relocate.
A first group of 1,600 refugees were taken to Bhasan Char last week. The island is 34 kilometres from the mainland in the Bay of Bengal, formed by silt less than 20 years ago. Bangladesh has built flood protection barriers, barracks, hospitals and mosques. But international aid agencies fear a big storm could endanger thousands of lives. The UN, which was excluded from the relocation process, wants more consultation and access. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, said he's concerned by reports of Rohingya refugees being moved to Bhasan Char. He wants access to see conditions on the island himself. Any transfer, he said, must follow a voluntary, informed decision. Rohingya refugees are urging Dhaka and the UN to focus on repatriation rather than relocation. They still want to return to Myanmar, but only if the Muslim-majority Rohingya are recognised as citizens.
Joining us is DW's Arafatul Islam, who reported this story. Arafatul, it's not a great sign if the UN High Commissioner for Refugees says he'd like to go to Bhasan Char to check out conditions because he's not had access to the place, is it?
Yes, it's a good sign that he has expressed his concern over the relocation of the Rohingya refugees to a remote island prone to cyclones and floods. And the UN had opposed the idea of relocating the refugees to the low-lying island when it was first proposed a few years ago. Since then, Bangladesh has built a flood protection dam, cyclone shelters, and other facilities to make it habitable for 100,000 people. Now, the UN wants to check independently whether the island is still habitable or not. The UN technical team is reportedly not getting access to the island.
Now, Cox's Bazar is itself overcrowded and vulnerable to flooding, and frankly, so is Bangladesh's entire coastline. So the criticism that this new location, Bhasan Char, is vulnerable to floods, is that really a fair criticism?
The camps in Cox's Bazar are indeed overcrowded, and it's also true the whole coastal area of Bangladesh is prone to cyclones and floods. But here we are talking about an island named Bhasan Char in Bengali, which means floating island in English. The island has shifted its position a couple of times in the past decades. Experts have different opinions on whether the island is old enough to become livable or not. Some experts think that the dam's height that protects the island needs to be increased from 3 meters to around 7 meters to make the island safe from natural disasters. Others say that increasing the dam's height could be disastrous because the structure built inside the island was not planned for a dam of that height. So the international community wants to examine everything independently to find answers on the island's habitability. But Bangladesh is reportedly not allowing them to do so.
Now, we heard at the end of the report that there were some refugees who would really like to just go back home, back to Myanmar. But how realistic is this at the moment?
Rohingya refugees want the Myanmar government to recognize them as citizens of the Buddhist majority country. They want to make sure that they will be safe there when they return in the future. Now, the international community needs to work on that. They have to do whatever it needs to ensure that the refugees will have a safe and independent life if they return to the country they came from. So far, Myanmar hasn't made any such commitment. Rohingya activists told me that the current repatriation proposal offers to shift these refugees from Cox's Bazar camps to other camps in Myanmar. That's why they don't agree to return under the current offer.
Arafatul Islam, thank you so much for joining us.